The Divorced Girl Smiling Podcast with your host, Jackie Pilosoff.
No one should have to go through a divorce feeling alone and isolated. That's why I created the Divorced Girl Smiling Podcast. Every show is 30 minutes, and the guests are my Divorced Girl Smiling trusted professionals. They're so wonderful. Financial advisors, divorce attorneys, mediators, divorce coaches, therapists, and more. We talk about every subject that you can even think of having to do with divorce. The podcast is meant to empower you and inspire you and make you feel really, really confident so that you can have a good divorce outcome and a great post-divorce life. You can find the Divorced Girl Smiling Podcast pretty much anywhere podcasts can be found, and always at divorcedgirlsmiling.com. So grab a cup of coffee or a glass of wine and start smiling. Before we get started, I want to tell you about two Divorced Girl Smiling trusted professionals who I think are wonderful. The first one is Sherry Morris, who is a high conflict and co-parenting coach. Sherry is the founder of her practice, Dear Divorce Coach, and the creator of Co-Parenting Compass, an online parenting program. Now, when it comes to high conflict divorce, trying to co-parent productively for your kids is challenging. I can't think of a better coach than Sherry to help you with these issues. Whether you and your ex decide to see Sherry as a couple to learn how to co-parent productively, or you want to see Sherry by yourself to deal with a difficult ex, she truly shines in changing your life and your kids' lives for the better. If you want to learn more about Sherry, you can find her on her website at deardivorcecoach.com. I also want to tell you about Joanne Littman, a financial advisor for Eagle Strategies. Jo has been doing this since 2014. She's a divorced mom, so she totally understands on a personal level. And I've known Joanne for a long time, maybe like 7 or 8 years. Jo is so wonderful because she's a great listener. She really knows the financial planning industry. She is extremely warm and will listen and advocate for you. I really, really trust her, and she's a wonderful person to help you make financial decisions during and after your divorce. If you want to learn more, you can find Joanne at newyorklife.com/agent/J Littman. And you can find both Sherry and Joanne in the Trusted Professional section of Divorced Girl Smiling. If you're someone who's listening and you're thinking about divorce or you're going through one, anyone you talk to is going to try to give you advice. Just get ready. You're going to hear it from every single person you even mention it to. And some of the advice is going to be really good. Some of it's going to be like, well, I'm not sure. And some of it's going to be bad. So today we're going to talk about advice you're going to hear that is bad advice and how to handle it. My guest is Hirsch Serman. Hirsch is a financial divorce coach. He's been doing this for a long time. He's also an accountant. He can do your taxes. And basically what Hirsch does is walk people through the divorce in a financial sense, kind of hold their hand and help them make decisions. So I would highly recommend Hirsch. But Hirsch and I have both heard some really bad divorce advice, and we're going to tell it to you so that you can not take it when you hear it. Hi, Hirsch.
How are you? It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
So nice to have you as usual. Don't you feel like you have clients who say, like, everyone's trying to give me advice?
I have to tell you, I love this topic for so many reasons. People are always giving bad advice. They give good advice as well. And I think there's so much advice out there, especially if you on the internet. You've got to understand, how does it pertain to me, or is it good advice in general? So I love this topic, and not many people speak about this at all.
Well, this is going to be a lot of fun because some of the bullet points that we discuss that we're going to talk are the funniest things. Like, people actually say this, but I want to tell my listeners they do. So
Yeah.
I'm going to jump right in here and I'm going to tell you now, I want to tell my listeners, this is what Hirsch has heard from people that people told them the advice. First one is, Go after every dollar you can. And my version of that is take him for every penny. Why is that bad
Yes.
advice?
Well, firstly, you're not going to get every penny. So let's start with that. The idea sounds great. However, there's a big however on that one. You have to weigh the cost, both financially, emotionally, socially. What is it going to do? I want that extra 25 grand, let's just say, right? What is it going to cost you in all of those areas of your life? So is it going to make a difference in the long run in your life if you have a few extra dollars? Now, I don't want to imply don't go after what you're entitled to. I'm not implying that you shouldn't go after money or you shouldn't try, you need to be financially secure coming out of this, or as financially secure as the situation allows. But what are the things that are going to happen? Is this going to drag out for another 6, 8 months and you're going to be taxed to the limit on your emotions? Or you want to go away for a weekend with a significant other you've met and your soon to be ex says, nope, not taking the kids, sorry, because of what you've been doing. And the emotional nightmare that sometimes going after money can be. So yes, sometimes you need to do the subpoenas and this forensic work and all the things that I get involved in, but you've got to kind of be deliberate. And again, I'm not saying don't go after what you're entitled for. You just really need to ask yourself and understand what it might take to get it.
I'll tell you, instead of going after every dollar, and Hirsch, tell me if you agree with me, go after what you think is fair. Not because you're angry or resentful or he had an affair or he abused you. To try to put those feelings aside and say, what is fair? And that is how you are going to get a good settlement, because and that is actually why you should work with Hirsch, because he can help you determine what is fair. Maybe you don't even know what's fair, but if Hirsch helps you to organize all the financials, you'll know what to ask for and you'll know what's fair.
I agree. I mean, sometimes you want to get your pound of flesh because you feel like you've been wronged, and it's really not going to help. You're just going to spend a lot of money. Often you don't even know what you're entitled to or what is fair. As you were saying, I've had people that they tell me that the spouse always talks about his retirement. Well, it's not his, it's in his name, maybe, but it could be a marital asset that needs to be split. And if that's the case, you're entitled and it's fair for you to ask for half. And so, really understanding those kind of things is very, very important. Absolutely.
I'm so glad you said that about um his retirement, because I hear so many women saying stuff like, "Well, I really think I deserve half of his 401k." Well, it's not his because it's both of yours, because if you stayed home with the kids all those years, you built that too, because he could have never worked and earned that money without you.
100%. I agree.
Okay, next piece of bad divorce advice is don't add too many people to your divorce team.
The initial reaction there, I think, is, oh my gosh, if I add another person, it's going to cost me even more. And, this kind of goes, the flip side of it is, I'll let my attorney do everything, and then we can talk about that as well. But generally, the more complex your situation, the more professionals you do need, because each one of them has a specific expertise within that area. I don't do the emotional side, I don't do the legal side. I'm very focused on the financial and the tax pieces. So if those are pieces that are a little bit more complicated or you don't understand your situation, you do need someone like myself, somebody who a marriage that's got $50,000 between the two of you, you probably don't need someone like myself. But if you got 5 million between the two of you and multiple assets or types of assets, the chances are you're going to need someone like myself. And it's not the best idea to rely on your attorney, who is a legal professional, not a financial professional. I think the key also is having the right people helping you through the right area, with their expertise. The classic example, the attorney, don't use them for your taxes or your finances, your emotions. They're your legal expert. And don't use me for your legal side. I'm not a legal expert. So having the right people can often get secure a better outcome you've got more approaches that you can put together in building that strategy and getting a better outcome for yourself, and often at a cheaper price.
The reason people say don't add too many people to your divorce team is because obviously the reason they're saying that is because it costs money. It costs money to hire a divorce coach. It costs money to hire divorce mortgage planner. It costs money to hire Hirsch. But here's what I want to tell everybody: the money that you spend on these other professionals is going to save you 20 times as much money in the divorce. Like if you end up spending another 10,000 on the divorce coach, Hirsch, mortgage planner, therapist, whatever, you're going to end up getting back maybe 50 or 100,000 more than you would have gotten. Trust me, I say this so with such conviction because I believe it. And the other thing is, you're going to be a happier person. You're going to be more calm. You're going to have a better experience, and you're going to have a better relationship with your ex at the end of the divorce. It will shape your whole life for the better.
The other thing I want to add is if you're working with the right professionals, you can also use them to educate yourself on the areas that you may not have had or been exposed to during your marriage. So usually one person takes care of the finances. I'm generally working with that other person, but as I'm going through the divorce with them, I'm also educating them. I've had clients literally never paid a bill in their life. They might be in their 50s or 60s. It was always taken care of. Well, now they've got to learn how to do that. They don't want to pay late fees and interest and all these unnecessary things as well. So using the right professionals not just can get you a better outcome, but can really educate you and set you up for going forward in a much better way as well.
You're listening to the Divorced Girl Smiling podcast. My name is Jackie Pilosoff, and I'm your host. And today we're talking about bad divorce advice. We are going to take everything you've heard from people, and you can decide whether it was bad advice or good advice. My guest is Hirsch Serman, who is a CPA and a financial divorce coach. He will hold your hand through your entire divorce and help you make decisions, analyze your numbers with you, help you know what you want, what you need, what to ask for. Love what Hirsch does. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, we're going to talk about more pieces of bad divorce advice. We'll be right back. One of the things I remember very clearly when I turned 50 was getting my AARP card in the mail. And I felt really old, but yet I was very relieved, and I came to realize how wonderful the organization is, supporting older men and women in so many meaningful ways. Well, guess what? There's an organization that is similar to AARP, but it's for divorced people and single parents. It's called the NASDF, the National Association for Single and Divorced Families. This is an amazing organization. They have so many benefits to their members, such as child education savings, free mental health counseling, real estate services, discounts on office supplies, school supplies, computers, and more, complimentary safety net child ID badges, discounted diaper and formula and medical supplies, and free 24-hour nurse helpline. This organization is so meaningful, and I absolutely think that if you are getting divorced, you should consider joining. If you want to learn more, go to nasdf.org. I also want to tell you about a wonderful divorce mediator and collaborative divorce professional. His name is David Lewis, and he has been doing this since 2010. David practices in Illinois and New York. He has been divorced in the past, so he understands on a personal level what you're going through. And he is just such a wonderful mediator who has a passion for helping people get divorced, have those hard conversations, safeguard their children, control the process, save time and money, and avoid the anguish of litigation. If you want to learn more, you can find him at lewisdivorcemediation.com. And you can find both David and the NASDF in the trusted professional section of Divorced Girl Smiling. Welcome back to the Divorced Girl Smiling podcast. My name is Jackie Pilosoff, and I'm your host. Today I'm here with my guest, Hirsch Serman. Hirsch is a financial divorce coach who helps people through their divorce, both emotionally, not emotionally like you think, but emotionally about money, anything financially related, and also will crunch numbers with you, help you make decisions throughout the divorce. You can find Hirsch at lifecycle.financial, and you can also find him in the trusted professional section of Divorced Girl Smiling. Hirsch and I are talking about bad divorce advice and why we think it's bad. And then we're going to give some good divorce advice. All right. Next piece of bad divorce advice. Attorneys are expensive, so be careful not to use them too much. What is that? Why would somebody say that?
Well, attorneys can be expensive. I tell my clients, pretty much every single one, the most expensive part of divorce generally are not the fees, it's your emotions. Those translate into fees because you change your mind a lot, you're not deliberate, you want your pound of flesh, whatever it might be. I think it is a balance on how much to use any professional, quite honestly, not just the attorney, but it is a balance. You need to work based off of your values and your priorities. Let's start with that. What do I really want and need at the end of this divorce? And you need to know yourself, and you know yourself better than anyone else, and you need to be deliberate with that. So I'm going to give you one quick example. Um, this actually comes from a client that I worked with recently, and she wanted to know if they should spend money on subpoenaing several banks that she knew that they had accounts at in the past, but she wasn't sure, are there still accounts there? He hasn't disclosed them. What should we do? And I asked her quite simply, and it's actually funny what you said about the emotions, because she's a therapist, and I asked her, what is your body telling you on this? And she said, hey, I asked that question. So I thought it was funny when you were saying the emotional piece just a minute ago. But I asked her the question after that, are you in 5 years or 10 years or forever, maybe, I don't know, are you going to be thinking about, I should have subpoenaed those banks, right? Because if she doesn't find out, is that going to weigh on her? Is that going to be something that she's going to carry with her? So she went along. She said, that's great advice. They subpoenaed the banks. They found nothing. All the bank accounts had been transferred and closed. But she wrote me a note thanking me for the guidance because it brought peace of mind to her.
Okay, now, Hirsch, attorneys are expensive, so be careful not to use them too much. That could actually be good advice. Because as you were saying, if you're calling your attorney saying, my ex-husband's so mean to me. He screamed at me in front of the kids. He already has a new girlfriend. My heart is broken. That's what the bad advice is. Like, that's what you should not be using your attorney for. But as Hirsch said,
Correct.
if this woman didn't want to call her attorney because she thought, well, it's just going to cost me money. I don't want to open this can of worms. Maybe they would have found $500,000 in the account. Or they didn't find anything, but at least now she knows and she never has to wonder. So, okay, it might have cost her a few hundred, probably not even maybe an hour of the divorce attorney's time or something like that. But you have to use your attorney for legal things.
Right.
Don't ever say, I don't want to bother my attorney because I know I'm just going to be getting billed. If it's a legal related question, spend the money.
I said earlier about, you got to be deliberate in how you use any of your professionals. I'll give you the flip side of the other story is I was working with a client, and when I was tracing the funds, I was doing some forensic work for them. The account that was closed was about 1.8 million, and what I noticed was only about 1.6 million went into this new account that was transferred. We did subpoena the money, the bank at that point. It was a financial institution, and we found there was 150,000 that had never been transferred. But he thought he was going to hide it that way by saying, "Oh, I moved the money," and no one was going to actually tick and tie all the numbers. So you do need to be deliberate. You do need to understand. But essentially, you got to ask yourself, what's the value that I'm going to get out of spending this money, and is it worth it?
Absolutely. Okay, here's another one. This is good. If you can afford it, you should keep the house. Now, why would anybody tell someone whether or not they should keep the house?
The house is such a big one, and humans are emotional. Let's start with that. We make our decisions generally from an emotional standpoint, not necessarily through reason and logic, right? So we often want to say we have so many good memories in that house, so the kids' good memories are in that house. And I want to point out, sometimes there's some bad memories in there as well. If you've been going through a divorce for any extended period of time, there's tension in that home, things like that. And it is possibly your largest asset. Generally, it's one of the two. Retirement and the home are generally the two largest assets. So you got to think through it carefully. Probably, you've got good and bad, but here I'll throw out, I guess, some of the considerations that people should be thinking about. One of the big ones is, oh, little Johnny's going to graduate high school in 3 years. I'll sell it then. Okay, great. That sounds great. But if you sell it together, you get a higher exclusion of capital gains. Are you going to create a large capital gain? As a single person owning that home, you could incur very large capital gains from that. Are you willing to take on 100% of the closing costs? Because if you sell it with your spouse, you effectively each take 50%, right? So those are some of the things. Are you going to be able to refinance that house? And this needs to be understood, especially what do you need if I've got to rely on receiving support and maintenance from the other party, right? What are the underwriting thresholds or thoughts? Would it be less expensive, or should I say, would a less expensive home still meet all of your needs? And the big one, obviously, is in the long term, is this the right home for you? There's a lot of criteria with that. So it's not such a simple thing. Oh, it cost me 3,500 or 4,000 a month. I can afford that. There's so many other aspects to it as well.
Well, I think the reason people say if you can afford to keep it, keep the house is they're thinking about your kids. They're thinking like, "Oh, you won't have to move, it'll be less stressful." I think when people give the bad advice, they're giving it out of love a lot of times. They're just not a professional. That's the problem with listening to advice like that. Because they haven't done the numbers. They haven't crunched the numbers like Hirsch can and say, here's how much your monthly payment is going to be. Only and your financial advisors and Hirsch what you can afford. And you know what's good for the kids? Not staying in the house, having their mother not be stressed, and being able to take vacations and actually enjoy the money instead of worrying about the big, huge payment every month. So, if we're talking about what's best for the kids, the person
I have seen that. I've seen people become a slave financially to the home, and then they can't do anything with their kids that are fun. And the people giving the advice, I think you're 100%. Nobody's coming and giving a friend advice thinking, I'm giving them bad advice. They truly, from the heart, want to give good advice. The other piece to it is, every divorce is its own journey. Everyone's is their specific situation is different. And so listen to the advice, don't resent it if it doesn't apply to you. Just make sure and digest it and then say, that's great advice for me, use it. If it's not great advice for you, don't. But you do need to discern a little bit, what's my best outcome I'm trying to get, and does this help me get there?
100%. Okay. Another piece of bad divorce advice. We have time for like two more.
Okay.
And you'll think these are funny because these came from an article that I wrote. So the ones we just told the listeners all came from Hirsch. They were all his. These are mine. Here's some bad advice that people say. The best way to get over someone is to get under someone else. So they're basically telling you to like go and get into another relationship immediately.
I will say this. This is a recent article. I read it, I think 2 days ago, 3 days ago. There's so much in that article. I recommend people go read it because it was a great article, and I think there was a little bit of levity, which is always nice as well. But I think you were spot on, and this is one you got to be very careful with. You going through an emotional time. You don't want to put yourself in an emotionally dangerous position either. And getting into a relationship like that can, physically as well as emotionally, but that is not the solution necessarily. Now, I'm not saying having a connection with somebody isn't special. It is. But to rushing to your next, relationship, or I personally didn't date for over a year. I had younger kids, relatively younger kids. I wanted to make sure I knew who I was before I jumped into another relationship, physical or emotional, because I've been married 20 years and I'm like, I don't even know. I've given myself over to the coupleship, to the kids, to everything else. Do I even know who I am and what I want? And so I agree with you. I think you got to be careful. Everyone's got to do what's right for them, but you got to make sure it's right for you as well when you're doing it.
Okay, now on the flip side, I remember people saying to me, "Oh, just take some time and be by yourself." I like that advice, but I felt like saying to them, "You know what? I've known I was getting divorced for like 2 or 3 years. I'm lonely. I've been by myself." And so what I want to tell listeners is if you want to date and if it's important to you to be with someone, that's one thing. Just be realistic. This is why a lot of people think I'm being rescued. They get into a second marriage, they end up divorced again 2 years later. And so just be very careful. There's a fine line, but Hirsch and I both don't want you to be lonely and not go out and not date. Just don't rush into anything and don't get remarried. So,
There's also, I think, a difference between jumping in and having companionship. And yes, people do get lonely because they've always had people around when they're in a marriage, even if it hasn't always been great. But I think people do rush in and they give themselves over and that's not what they need right now. What they need is that companionship and that camaraderie. And so they're looking for the wrong thing or trying to get into the wrong thing sometimes and not fulfilling the need of what they have. And that's, I think, sometimes why those second marriages break down because they jumped in for the wrong reason. And now it's like, that's not fulfilling me. I need something different. And so I think that's a big piece of why second marriages break down.
absolutely. Okay, I think we have time for one or two more, but people say, like, "Oh, just get over it. Don't be so angry. You're not that kind of person." And I think that's bad advice because anger is really understandable and you kind of have to get pissed for a little while. What do you think?
I think you need to value that there are emotions. There's something going on. So anger is one of the big ones. And it's also kind of like I said earlier, I ask people sometimes like, what's your body telling you? When you have anger, that's telling you something. And it's something that you need to work through and work on. I can become a much better person if I listen to the cues I'm giving myself. Anger is one of those big cues. I'm angry. Okay, let's look at what is the root cause of that. Why? Is it something that I can work with, deal with? How do I overcome it? And sometimes, again, getting the right professional involved, that might be a therapist that can really help you understand what's causing that anger.
Mhm.
Okay, great. Now let's work through that to eliminate that for you. To push it away and ignore it, I just don't think that's a healthy way to go.
Right. You have to feel it. I worry most about women who are not angry and they're just like, well, like one woman said to me, her husband cheated and they got divorced. He left her for someone else. And she goes, well, he had cancer. So, okay, that's very sad, and by the way, he was completely fine, it wasn't like a horrible kind of cancer, not that any cancer isn't horrible, it always is. I have had cancer, just in case anyone's offended. That is not a reason not to be angry because she wasn't making it at all about her, it was all about him, and those are the people I worry most about. I think you really have to get angry and pissed and be really pissed for a little bit. But then you need, as Hirsch said, a therapist to help you so you can release that anger and move on and forgive and have a good life.
And I think the goal is to move on, but when they say, "Oh, just forget it and move on," that approach anyway, there is a loss, and there is a need to mourn and be angry and to go through all of those stages. No one would say if you had the best marriage in the world and you were like the ideal couple of history, if somebody lost that spouse due to a death, no one would say, "Oh, just move on. Come on, don't be angry about it." Right? It is a loss. A divorce is a different kind of loss, and we need to give it the same reverence and work through it in the same way. Again, we have different ways to do that, but again, to just move on and ignore it, I don't think is the right approach either.
Wow, Hirsch, can you believe our time is up? That went by like
That
that.
yeah.
Thank you so much for taking time to be on the show. I love the conversation. I thought
It's
it was
always
great.
great to be on your show. Thank you.
If you would like to talk to Hirsch, have a consult, or work with him, you can find him at lifecycle.financial. You can also find Hirsch in the trusted professional section of Divorced Girl Smiling under Financial Divorce Coach or Coaches. I don't know which one it is. You're the only one. And you can also go to divorcedgirlsmiling.com to listen to more podcasts, read articles on every topic you can imagine, from thinking about divorce all the way through it, everything that can come up to living life after divorce. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. We'll talk to you real soon.